The tomato soup tastes like metal and hate, a vile concoction that clings to the roof of my mouth like oil. I am sitting in my wheelchair, a prisoner in the sunroom of the house I paid for 30 years ago, forcing down a spoonful of lukewarm sludge. The sun is shining outside, bright and mocking, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. But in here, the atmosphere is heavy with resentment. Nurse Brenda stands over me, her arms crossed over her chest, tapping her foot with a rhythm that screams impatience. She is a large woman with cold, damp hands and eyes that look at me not as a human being, but as a piece of furniture that needs to be dusted, or perhaps a stain that refuses to wash out. "Eat it all, Walter," she snaps, checking her phone for the third time in a minute. "Your son pays good money for me to keep your strength up. Don't be a baby. You know what happens when you don't eat. We have to use the tube." I swallow. My throat constricts, fighting the instinct to gag. I am 81 years old. I am a retired structural engineer who ensured the safety of half the bridges in this county. I calculated loads, stresses, and failure points for decades. Now I cannot even ensure the safety of my own lunch. I suspect Brenda spits in my food. I suspect she waters down my pain medication, selling the excess oxycodone on the side. I suspect she pinches the fleshy part of my upper arms, where the bruises would show, when she transfers me from the bed to the chair, just to see me wince. But suspicion is a ghost. It has no weight in the world of the living. It is a whisper against a hurricane. My son, Jason, comes home at 6 p.m. sharp. He walks in with the air of a martyr, loosening his tie, smelling of expensive cologne and the stress of a job he isn't qualified for. His wife, Sharon, follows him, dropping her keys on the console table and complaining about the traffic on the I-95. They look at me, sitting by the window, but they don't see me. They see an obligation. They see a dwindling bank account. They see an expiration date that keeps getting pushed back. "How was he today, Brenda?" Jason asks. He pours himself a drink from the crystal decanter before even saying hello to me. The amber liquid swirls in the glass, the only warmth in the room. "Oh, difficult," Brenda lies smoothly. She smooths her scrubs, putting on a face of exhausted sainthood. "He refused his meds again. He spit out his lunch. He's getting more aggressive, Mr. Miller."
"I tried to change his sheets, and he swatted at me. I don't know how much longer I can handle him without a raise. It's becoming a safety issue." "Dad," Jason sighs. He turns to me with a look of profound disappointment, the kind you give a dog that has chewed up a slipper. "Please, we are doing everything we can. Brenda is the best agency nurse we could find. You have to cooperate. If you don't, we'll have to consider other options. We can't keep doing this." Other options means the state facility, the one downtown with the 1-star rating and the smell of urine in the lobby that hits you before the automatic doors even open. "She hurts me, Jason," I say. My voice is raspy, weak from disuse and dehydration. "She mocks me. She pinches me. And the soup? It tasted like saliva. She spit in it, Jason. I saw her." Jason rolls his eyes. He looks at Sharon, who shakes her head, sipping her wine. "He's sundowning again," Sharon whispers, loud enough for me to hear. She always talks about me in the third person, as if I have already left the room. The paranoia is getting worse. Last week, he thought the mailman was stealing his pension checks. "It's not paranoia," I try to shout. It comes out as a wheeze, a pathetic sound that barely carries across the room. "Check the cameras. Check the footage. You'll see." "Dad, we took the security cameras down months ago because you said they felt intrusive," Jason says, his voice edged with anger. "You said you felt like a prisoner in your own home, remember? Stop making things up. Brenda is a saint for dealing with you. If she quits, you're going to Shady Pines by the end of the week. Do you understand?" I sat there, watching my own flesh and blood defend the woman who torments me,
realizing that my pain was nothing more than an inconvenience to their lifestyle. It is a hollow, freezing sensation to look into your child's eyes and see not love, but a calculation of how long until you expire so they can cash out. If you have ever screamed the truth only to be called crazy by the people who are supposed to protect you, take a moment to subscribe to the reality that sometimes the only person who will save you is yourself. Because I am about to prove that while they removed the security cameras, they forgot about the one camera that watches over the things we love most. That night, after they put me to bed and turned off the lights, leaving me in the silence of my room, I waited. My mind was not sundowning, it was sharpening.
It was calculating load-bearing limits and structural integrity, just like the old days. But this time, the structure was my own survival. They had removed the home security system, yes. They had stripped the Ring cameras from the doors and the Nest cams from the living room. But they had forgotten about Buster. Buster was my golden retriever, my best friend who passed away 6 months ago. He was the only soul in this house who looked at me with unconditional love. Before he died, Jason had bought a pet cam, a small treat dispensing camera that sat on the bookshelf, designed to let you talk to your dog from your phone when you were at work. It was shaped like a paw print. It was cute. It was innocuous. It blended into the clutter of books, old trophies, and framed photos on the shelf facing my bed. They had unplugged it when Buster died, leaving it there as a piece of dusty memorabilia. But 2 days ago, when I had a rare moment of mobility when Brenda was outside smoking, I had managed to wheel myself over to the shelf. I had plugged it back in. The little blue light had blinked once, then gone dark as it connected to the Wi-Fi automatically. I reached under my pillow. My fingers brushed against the cool metal of the old tablet I hid there, an ancient iPad Jason had discarded years ago. My hand shook as I opened the app, Pet Connect. I scrolled back through the timeline, 12:30 p.m., lunchtime. The video loaded. The angle was low, looking up from the bookshelf, capturing the entire left side of the room where my bed and the side table were located. I saw Brenda into the room with the tray. She wasn't smiling. She looked annoyed. She slammed the tray down on the bedside table, making the water glass jump. I saw her look at the door to make sure no one was watching. And then I saw it. She leaned over the bowl. She didn't just spit. She hawked a thick, green wad of phlegm from deep in her throat and let it fall into the tomato soup. She stirred it in with the spoon, a cruel smile playing on her lips. I gagged, watching it. The memory of the taste came flooding back, vile and metallic. But that wasn't the worst part. After she fed me the tainted soup, forcing the spoon into my mouth while I tried to turn my head away, she pulled out her phone. She walked to the window, right in front of the camera. She dialed a number. The audio on the pet cam was crystal clear, amplified by the silence of the room. "Yeah, he's still ticking," Brenda said into the phone. She laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "I don't know, babe. The son is getting impatient. He said he needs the inheritance by the end of the year for the business loan. He's in deep with the bank." I froze. The tablet nearly slipped from my fingers. "I'm upping the dosage on the blood thinners starting tomorrow," Brenda continued. "I'll mix it with his grapefruit juice. It amplifies the effect. He'll bleed out internally. It'll look like a natural stroke or an aneurysm. No autopsy required for an 81-year-old with a history of hypertension. Yeah, we'll get our cut. 50,000, just like we agreed. Don't worry. The son signed off on do whatever it takes." The video ended. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The grief was a physical weight, crushing my chest harder than any bridge collapse. It wasn't just abuse. It was a contract killing. And my son, my Jason, the boy I taught to fish, the boy I sat up with when he had the chicken pox, was the client. He hadn't just hired a bad nurse. He had hired a hitman in scrubs. I watched the video 3 times. I needed to be sure. I needed to let the horror settle into my bones so it could harden into steel. I backed it up to the cloud. I emailed it to a secure server I used for my old consulting files. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt the cold steel of resolve replace the soft tissue of my heart. I was an engineer. I knew how to build things, and I knew how to demolish them. I knew that if you take out the right support beam, the whole structure comes down. I needed an ally. I needed someone outside this house of horrors, someone who wouldn't look at a frail old man and see a vegetable. I waited until morning. When Brenda went to the bathroom to fix her makeup, leaving her phone on the kitchen counter, I pulled out the tablet again. I didn't call the police. Not yet. Police needed evidence chains, warrants, time. I didn't have time. I was scheduled to bleed out starting tomorrow. I called Frank. Frank was my old foreman, a man who had walked steel beams with me in the 70s when we built the skyline. He was rough, he was loud, he smelled of cigar smoke and honesty, and his daughter, Sarah, just happened to be the toughest district attorney in the state. "Frank," I whispered when he answered. My voice was shaking, but not from fear, from rage. "Walter?" Frank's voice was gravelly with sleep. "It's 6 a.m. Everything all right? I need you to come over for lunch on Sunday," I said. "Sunday? Why?"
"I need you to bring Sarah," I said. "And Frank, bring the police scanner. And tell Sarah to bring her badge." "Walter, what's going on? You sound different." "I'm not different, Frank," I said. "I'm just finally seeing clearly. Just come and act like we're just catching up." I hung up. I hid the tablet back under the pillow. I heard the toilet flush. Brenda was coming back. I closed my eyes. I slowed my breathing. I prepared to play the role of the confused, dying old man one last time. Because on Sunday, the engineer was coming out of retirement, and I was going to bring the whole house down. Sunday lunch was a tradition Jason kept up only for appearances, a weekly performance of domestic bliss designed to convince the neighbors, and perhaps himself, that we were still a family. It was the one day a week he pretended he wasn't waiting for me to die. The dining room table was set with the good china, the Lenox pattern with the gold rim that my wife had loved so dearly. The silver was polished to a high shine, gleaming under the chandelier, though I knew the tarnish lay thick just beneath the surface of everything in this house. I was wheeled to the head of the table, a prop in their play, dressed in a clean, starched shirt that Brenda had roughly buttoned 5 minutes ago. She had pinched the loose skin of my neck in her haste, and the stinging sensation was a sharp, grounding reminder of my reality. I sat there, gripping the armrests of my wheelchair, listening to the hum of the refrigerator in the other room. The air smelled of roast beef and floor wax, a combination that turned my stomach. "Now remember, Dad," Jason hissed in my ear as he bent down to lock the wheelchair brakes. His breath smelled of mints masking scotch. "Frank is coming over. Don't embarrass us. Just eat and smile. If you make a scene, Brenda puts you on a liquid diet for a week." I looked at him. I looked at the son whose diaper I had changed, whose tuition I had paid, whose first car I had bought. I saw the fear behind his eyes, the desperate need for control. "I'll be on my best behavior," I said. My voice was calm. It was too calm. It lacked the tremor of fear he was used to. Jason frowned, pulling back slightly. He sensed a shift in the atmosphere, a change in the barometric pressure of the room, but he was too arrogant to place it. He patted my shoulder, a condescending tap-tap, and walked to the sideboard to check the wine. Frank arrived at noon exactly. The doorbell rang, a solid, authoritative sound. Jason rushed to answer it, putting on his charming host mask. I heard the murmur of greetings in the foyer, the rustle of coats being taken. Then Frank walked into the dining room. He looked older than the last time I had seen him. His face was weathered like old leather, mapped with the deep lines of a life spent outdoors, but his eyes were sharp, clear, and alert. He walked with a slight limp, a souvenir from a construction accident in '88, but he still occupied space like a mountain. Beside him stood Sarah, his daughter. She wasn't wearing the severe suits she wore in the district attorney's office. She was in casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, carrying a large, nondescript tote bag over her shoulder. Frank boomed, crossing the room in 3 long strides. He grasped my frail, spotted hand in his massive, calloused paw.
He shook it with a gentleness that belied his size. "I feel like hell, Frank," I smiled, squeezing his hand back with as much strength as I could muster. "Let's hope so," Frank muttered, casting a quick, hard glance at Jason. We sat. The seating arrangement was a chessboard I had no control over, but the pieces were finally moving in my favor. Frank sat to my right. Sarah sat to my left. Jason and Sharon sat opposite us, creating a clear battle line across the roast beef. Brenda hovered in the doorway of the kitchen, her arms crossed over her chest, watching us like a prison guard waiting for a riot. Jason poured the wine. It was a vintage bottle from my cellar, one I had been saving for his wedding anniversary, which he had apparently decided to open for a casual lunch. He laughed too loudly at Frank's polite comments about the weather. Sharon picked out her salad, her eyes darting around the room, nervous energy radiating off her like heat. "So, Walter," said Sarah, leaning forward. She didn't touch her wine. Her voice was conversational, but there was a steel undercurrent to it. "Dad tells me you've been having some trouble with your medication, feeling a bit—" Jason stiffened. His fork clattered against his plate. "Oh, Dad gets confused," Jason interjected quickly, flashing a tight, white-toothed smile. "His memory isn't what it used to be. He forgets he took them or he thinks he took the wrong ones. Brenda manages everything perfectly. We're very lucky to have her." I looked at the doorway. Brenda didn't smile. She just stared, her eyes flat and cold.
Sarah asked, her gaze drifting past Jason to the woman in the doorway. "You're with the Golden Years Agency, correct?" "That's right," Brenda said. Her voice was tight, defensive. "Funny," Sarah said. She reached into her tote bag. The sound of a zipper opening seemed incredibly loud in the sudden silence of the room. She didn't pull out a gift. She pulled out a manila folder. "I ran a check on them this morning," Sarah continued, opening the folder and smoothing a document onto the tablecloth. "That agency lost its license 6 months ago due to systemic negligence. They don't exist anymore. And you, Brenda, or should I say Karen Willis, you have 3 pending civil lawsuits for elder abuse in 3 different counties." The room went silent. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the vacuum before an explosion. The clink of silverware stopped. The humming of the refrigerator seemed to cut out. Jason dropped his fork. It hit the edge of his plate and fell to the floor with a metallic ring. "Jason," stammered. That's impossible. I vetted her myself," I asked. I turned my wheelchair to face my son. I saw the sweat bead on his upper lip. "Did you check them, Jason? Or did you hire the person who promised to get the job done the fastest?" "Dad, stop," Jason warned, his face flushing a deep, angry red. "You're having an episode. You're paranoid. Sarah, I don't know where you got this information, but I have something to show you," I said, cutting him off. I nodded to Sarah. Sarah reached back into her bag and pulled out a portable projector. It was small, sleek, and black. She set it on the sideboard, pushing aside a bowl of wax fruit, and pointed the lens at the blank, cream-colored wall of the dining room. She connected it to her phone with a cable. "We don't have time for home movies," Sharon snapped, standing up abruptly. Her chore screeched against the hardwood. "This is ridiculous. We invited you here for a nice lunch, and you're interrogating our staff? Frank, take your daughter and leave." "Sit down, Sharon," Frank growled. He didn't shout. He didn't stand up. He just spoke with the voice of a man who had moved steel beams for 40 years, a voice that broke no argument. Sharon sat. She looked at Jason, terrified. The video started. It wasn't a home movie. It was the footage from the pet cam. Giant high-definition audio filled the dining room, echoing off the high ceilings.
Brenda's voice on the recording: "He refused his meds. He's getting aggressive." The image on the wall was crisp. It showed the sunroom. It showed me, frail and helpless in the bed. It showed Brenda standing over the tray. Then came the visual. We watched, 10 feet tall on the dining room wall, as Brenda hawked a thick green glob of phlegm and spat it directly into my tomato soup. We watched her stir it in with a look of pure malice. Sharon gagged. She covered her mouth with her linen napkin, turning away from the wall. "Oh, God," she whimpered. Jason stared at the screen, his mouth open, his face draining of color. But the video wasn't done. Then came the phone call. Brenda's voice echoed through the room. "Yeah, he's still kicking. I don't know, babe. The son said he needs the inheritance by the end of the year for the business loan." Jason went pale. He looked like a man who had been struck by lightning, his internal organs fried while his skin remained intact. Brenda's voice continued. "I'm upping the dosage on the blood thinner starting tomorrow.
He'll bleed out internally. It'll look like a natural stroke. Yeah, we'll get our cut. The video cut to black. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Jason couldn't breathe. He looked at Brenda, who was backing away toward the kitchen door. He looked at me. "Dad," he whispered. His voice was a broken thing. "Dad, that's not... I never said..." "You told her you needed the money," I said. My voice cut through the room like a scalpel, precise and cold. I wasn't shouting. I was stating facts. You told her I was a burden. You told her to do whatever it takes to manage the situation. I heard you, Jason, 3 weeks ago, in the kitchen. Jason screamed. He stood up, knocking his chair over backward. He held his hands out, pleading with the room, pleading with God. "I meant a nursing home. I didn't mean kill you," Brenda shrieked. She abandoned her post at the door, her face twisting into a snarl. "You said you needed him gone before the audit. You said you were underwater. Don't you dare put this on me, you little weasel." "That's enough," Sarah said. She stood up. She pulled a gold badge from her belt and clipped it to her waistband. "Karen Willis, you are under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Jason Miller, stay right there."
As if on cue, the wail of sirens, which had been approaching in the distance, a sound we had all been ignoring, suddenly cut off right in the driveway. Car doors slammed. The front door burst open. "Police!" Uniformed officers flooded the hallway, their boots heavy on the hardwood. Brenda tried to run. She bolted for the back door leading to the patio. Frank didn't even stand up. He just stuck out a heavy, work-booted foot. Brenda tripped. She went down hard, crashing into the china cabinet. The glass door shattered. The sound of breaking glass and cracking porcelain was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. It was the sound of my prison walls coming down. "He told me to do it," she screamed as 2 officers pinned her to the floor amidst the shards of my wife's favorite plates. "He told me to do it." Jason was crying now. He sank to his knees on the rug, sobbing into his hands. "Dad, please," he blubbered. "I didn't know she would go this far. I just needed the loan. I was gonna pay you back." "You were going to pay me back with my own life insurance," I said. I wheeled myself over to him. I looked down at the top of his head. I remembered the day he was born. I remembered teaching him to tie his shoes. I felt a profound, aching sadness, a hole in my chest where my heart used to be, but I felt no hesitation. "You're not my son anymore," I said softly. "You're a bad investment." An officer pulled Jason to his feet. "Jason Miller, you're under arrest," the officer said, snapping the cuffs on. They led him away. He looked back at me one last time, his eyes pleading, but I turned my wheelchair toward the window. Sharon followed, screaming about her reputation and demanding to call her lawyer. Then the house was quiet. The officers took statements. They took the projector. They took the hard drive with the emails. When they were finally gone, Frank walked to the sideboard. He poured 2 glasses of the expensive wine Jason had bought. He handed one to me. "To Buster," Frank said, raising his glass. "To the dog who saw everything," I replied. I took a sip. It was rich, oaky, and tasted like justice. I looked at the bookshelf across the room. The little pet cam was still there, its green light blinking steadily, a silent sentinel in the chaos. I wasn't alone. I had Frank. I had Sarah. I had the truth. And for the first time in 3 years, the knot of fear in my stomach was gone. "Frank," I said, setting the glass down. "What?" Frank asked, grinning. "Throw it out," I said. "Order us a pizza. Extra cheese, pepperoni,